Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey with Lisa and Usman. Let's watch this TV show and I will react to it. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I am a therapist and a professor. Let's get to it.
Last night was Usman and my first evening together. We made love. There is a big cultural difference in making love, American versus Nigerian. It's like oral sex. He didn't know what it was. I had to show him that. I was like, really?
So I guess that answers the question between, she said before she came out that there's a Nigerian way to have sex and there's an American way to have sex, and I'm going to show him the American way to have sex. So I guess we have the answer to that question.
I found out from Usman before I left that his mother is under the impression that I want to bring her son to the United States to be a slave. I'll tell you this right now. We're going to be married with or without her blessing.
With
or without. That is correct.
No.
Here in Nigeria, we do respect our parents so much. When your mom said no, it's totally no. I don't think Usman is going to disobey his mother and do something that his mother doesn't like.
So this is a very common misunderstanding that I see among cross-cultural couples when this is present. This notion that the children, adult children, will still very much respect their parents' opinion. In mainstream American culture, or in the culture I know of in mainstream America, it is uncommon for an adult child to change their wedding plans based on their parents' point of view. In fact, it might even make it more romantic. We have, stories and movies about the parents, like, I don't know, Meet the Fockers, wasn't that part of the premise of that? Is it helps to, star-crossed lovers, that whole thing. Brings people together in mainstream American culture. It's like, oh, against all odds, our love prevailed, even though our parents didn't want us to get married. There are other cultures, and one might even think that a majority of the humans on the planet do not think that way. They very much value their parents, they value their family of origin, and when they are adults, they still want to please their parents and they still value that relationship. And so this is a cross-cultural thing, it looks like. For Lisa, she's like, look, we're getting married with or without Usman's mother's blessing. And then the three of them are like, wait, what? I don't think so. I don't think you understand where Usman is coming from. In the United States or in Seattle, one of the ways manifestations that I'll see this is with Korean immigrant families, where the Korean parents who were born in Korea and very much of Korean culture, South Korean culture, will have adult children. The adult children will be half or mostly Americanized. They'll meet someone that is not Korean, and because most people in the Seattle area are not Korean, so roll the dice, the person you fall in love with or start to date, unless you really purposely try to date other Korean people, you're probably going to fall in love and marry a non-Korean person. Well, to a lot of Korean parents, not all, they will not want you to marry a random person. They will want you to marry someone within the Korean community. Not always, but sometimes. And there can be a lot of conflict there. There can be a lot of problems there where the 30-year-old Korean kid is trying to convince the parents, look, my spouse, my fiancé is great. And maybe the parents won't even show up to the wedding. Now, to mainstream Americanized eyes, maybe even to the spouse that's marrying into the Korean family, they look at this behavior and they're just like, this is crazy. How do these parents get off putting my fiancé through emotional hell just because I'm not Korean? Just because they've just decided that I'm not good enough for their child? It can be very distressing. And I'm not saying that the Korean parents are right. I'm just saying that everyone comes from a different cultural understanding, and we see this here. So Lisa, she can have her culture too. She doesn't have to give up her culture, but she has to understand that her way isn't the only way. And that for Usman, he might really value his mother's opinion, and Lisa should respect that. Now, maybe Lisa will be able to be convinced to really respect this process. Her knee-jerk reaction is, look, we're getting married with or without Usman's mother's blessing. And then maybe she can learn, oh, wait, I guess I have to rethink this. And this is a common element that I see on this show, is the Americans will just assume that their way and their culture is the way that everyone operates or should operate, without even having the question of, I wonder how our culture is going to differ, and I wonder what kind of cultural notions I'm going to have to be flexible around. It's just strange that people cross-culturally don't have that as an expectation. Like, we're going to bump up against some interesting cultural conflicts here, and we have to have a way of navigating that. And I have to remain tentative as I head into that because it's surely going to happen. Let's see how they navigate this.
I want to know in front of them, what if your mom absolutely, positively says, no, you are not marrying her? What are you going to do?
That would be wisdom in display. I'm going to apply it.
That does not tell me what you're going to do.
Wisdom just come to you. Anytime you want to do something, God will help you with wisdom.
So Usman's doing a pretty good job being political with the response. So for Lisa right now, it's normal for her to really want to know, wait, Usman, are you 100% into this relationship? Because I want to marry someone who's 100% into the relationship. Totally normal. It's also totally normal for Usman to be like, look, I am 100% on my mom's side, and I have optimism that you are going to get my mom's blessing because my mom is a nice person. She doesn't like white people, but I'm fairly certain that we can smooth this over, so I won't have to make a choice between you and my mom. And I could also see him saying, look, if it comes down to it, yeah, I'm going to choose my mom. And that's no reflection on you. That actually makes me, in my culture, that actually makes me a good person. In my culture, women would not want to date me if I was willing to give up my relationship with my mom to date somebody. In my culture, it's considered a deplorable attitude and behavior to just discount your mother's opinion about your marriage and that kind of thing. But for Lisa, it's a completely different set of assumptions, and she's heading into this conversation assuming her culture is the culture. It's a very common thing for people to do, particularly Americans, and it will potentially cause a lot of problems here if she doesn't stop and try to figure things out. Before I go on, subscribe, hit the bell below, become a patron on Patreon, comment below. Have you ever been in a cross-cultural relationship? What was it like for you? In a lot of ways, every relationship is a cross-cultural relationship. In a heterosexual relationship, one person comes from male culture, another person comes from women culture, meaning that women experience the culture differently than men do typically. If one person is older, another person's younger. One person comes from the city, another person comes from the country. One person is educated, the other person is not. One person comes from, like for me, I come from academia and psychology, and I'm in that culture. My wife does not. That's another cross-cultural relationship. One person comes from a big family, another person doesn't. One person comes from an emotionally expressive family, another person doesn't. This is a cross-cultural experience, and through that, you have to know that your assumptions are not the assumptions, and that your values are not the values, and you have to accommodate. Now, you don't have to give up your values. You don't have to give in to the other person's values, but you have to recognize that a conversation and maybe accommodations have to be made here. Like for Lisa, she could say in this situation, explain to me about this thing about moms, because that's not how we are in the States. Tell me all the thing. The three of them are already trying to do that. Everyone respects their parents. And if push comes to shove, most people will do what their parents say. However, let's try to get mom to like you. Let's try to make that happen so that everyone can be happy, because that's the best way to move forward. So that means, Lisa, you have to learn how to please her in some way. And let me help you with that. Anyway, let's see what happens.
I know it's not going to be easy to get the blessing from mom, so I lied to Lisa about how we can get married even without mom's blessings, because I just want to think positively and hope for the best, because I really do want to marry her.
That not flying with me.
Baby, look, wait.
So, given her ignorance and her lack of understanding about cultural differences and her cultural assumptions, she is interpreting the situation as hurting her feelings, meaning that she's like, wait, so if your mom doesn't approve of me, you're not going to marry me. I'm getting that vibe from you. That means that your love is very shallow. But if she understood and listened, she would understand that that isn't an indication of shallow love, and she doesn't have to be hurt by this. So it's unfortunate to see that she isn't open to that. In my world, since in psychology, in academia, in training for to be a therapist, we talk about culture all the time. We talk about cultural assumptions, multiculturalism, relativism. We talk a little bit about postmodernism, other kinds of things like what I'm talking about. And it boggles my mind that the people on this show do not understand that they are marrying someone from a different culture. It should seem obvious to them. But that's my culture. In my culture, we understand culture and we talk about it all the time, and it seems obvious to me. And I have to recognize that in Lisa's culture, it probably is barely talked about, if never talked about.
Usman has told me we do not need his mom's blessing. But now we're sitting here and he's changed his story. So now I've got a whole lot of anxiety just rush over my body. If she refuses to give her blessing, there is a good possibility that I will be returning to the United States as a single woman.
So as always, whenever they're in the interview away from the interaction, they always say, or not always, but they often will say more differentiated, more emotionally intelligent things. So she just said, I'm having anxiety. But her behavior wasn't really exhibiting that, right? Her behavior walking away from the table exhibits disapproval. And she says, I'm not going to take this crap, or whatever she said. It's anger and control. In the interview, she's like, I'm really scared. I'm scared of being alone. I'm scared of losing Usman. That would be a wonderful thing to say when you are in the moment. Now, as a therapist, I understand that for a lot of people, that's hard. For everyone, that's hard. And people will come to my office and they'll tell me about an interaction they were in. We'll get down to their base emotions and they'll be able to say, yeah, I was scared, I was hurt, and that's why I did X, Y, and Z. And then we'll talk about how they can own and know those feelings in the moment and express them and avoid the kinds of self-protective behaviors, defensive behaviors like the one she exhibited, because that doesn't help her. If she's worried about losing Usman, it'd be better for her to say, I'm really worried I'm going to lose you, rather than, screw this noise, I'm out of here, I hate your culture, that kind of message.
I am kind of apprehensive of going to Kaduna because I have a little bit of an issue with his female fans. You know, he has too many followers, too many friends that are constantly blowing up the phone.
So this is a sign of insecure attachment. You have secure attachment where you are raised well enough so that you trust other people to love you and take care of you, and you also like yourself and believe that you are lovable. When you are raised in a way that doesn't make you feel that way, and you adapt insecure attachment styles because of what was happening when you're growing up, you have a baseline of fear of losing other people and having other people abandon you or hurt you or reject you in some way. And when you have that constant buzz of insecurity, one of the things that you will see is when your spouse's or your partner's phone starts to blink, the person will really want to pay attention to it because they are looking to see if the person is cheating on them or this kind of thing. And to extend that even more, some people will install, some kind of app on their spouse's phone secretly so that they can watch what they're doing on their phone. They might rummage through their things. They might open their phone up secretly and look through the things because of that fear of like, am I being cheated on? Am I going to lose this person? And phones, for most people, they understand that the phone is the access to every other competitor in the world. And if you are, again, baseline insecure, every time the phone dings, it's like, oh crap, is that someone that's going to take away my spouse from me? Not everyone is like this, but many people are. And right now, Lisa is exhibiting that. Now, we're concerned because there's nothing wrong with Lisa being insecure. And there's nothing wrong with maybe her saying, look, when your phone blows up, it makes me feel worried I'm going to lose you. Can you help reassure me that I'm not going to lose you? Or can you tell me what sort of things you're getting on your phone? Because I'm guessing that it's innocuous, but I have a paranoid brain. And maybe if you tell me what your phone was blowing up about earlier, it'll soothe my mind. It's not your fault that I have this need. It's the fault of my parents when I was growing up and all the other times I've been hurt in the past. There's nothing wrong with asking a spouse that. So I'm not saying that if you feel this out there, which I know many of you have, that you have to suppress. Throughout everything I've been talking about here, in no way am I saying that the solution is to suppress your fears. It is finding a way to own your fear, to be differentiated about it and okay with that and accept it, welcome it because it's there to stay anyway, and hand it over to the other person and give them a chance to love you and take care of you. And you hand it over without being accusatory and without blaming them. You hear the way I describe it. It's like when I heard your phone blowing up, when I heard your phone bowing up, if you will, my traumas were triggered because I've been hurt in the past. A past relationship, they cheated on me, and I found out that a lot of the times when their phone was dinging, it was because they were contacting their mistress or their secret partner. And it even goes further back to when my parents were cheating on each other or my dad left me or whatever it is. So when I saw your phone blowing up, it triggered that paranoia in me. And I tried to get rid of it, but it didn't go away because it's really powerful for me. So I just want you to know that that's how much I don't want to lose you. And is there something you can do to reassure me, either by telling me or maybe even showing me what's on your phone? You don't have to. I don't want to invade your space. You deserve your own boundary there. But you could really help me out by soothing my fears, by reassuring me or showing me or something. Hand it over. Now, in that little role play I just did, there was no accusation. I owned my feelings, but I gave the other person a chance to rise to the occasion and take care of me. This is how people bond. This is how people take care of each other. This is how people get their needs met. What most people do is they'll either do this, which is I'm going to invade. So that's one defense that she probably learned either through watching it or just learned that that's the only way she can do it. So her way is to invade and control and demand. And that's her way of trying to alleviate her worries. Another way that people will do is they'll back away and they'll slowly fall out of love. They'll gain contempt and I don't need that person. He's probably cheating on me. Screw him. And then you get kind of silent. Another way is to try to suppress the feeling and blame the self. Oh, I'm so jealous. There's something wrong with me. Why am I doing this? I need to find a way to cope. And I get a lot of emails from people asking this very question. This not just about jealousy, but about a lot of things. It's like, how do I cope with this feeling? How can I get over it? You can't get over it. You can't cope with it. The only way you can manage it is by owning it and expressing it while not being accusatory or blaming to the other person. Unless the other person deserves it, which is fine. Like if Usman was cheating on her, then there's nothing wrong with accusing him of cheating. So do not try to cope. Do not cope. I put it in quotes because it's not really a way to cope. Do not try to suppress. Do not use mindfulness to get rid of your emotions. Your emotions are there for a reason. It's telling you you're scared. And, the analogy that I'll give to people sometimes is like, imagine you're a passenger in a car and the driver is drunk and kind of weaving their way down the road. And, how would you feel? Well, most people would be afraid and angry. Like, oh crap, am I going to die? We're going 65 miles an hour down the road and they're kind of weaving out. They're pretty drunk. I'm afraid. Okay, so in that instance, when you're afraid, should you suppress your emotion? Should you do mindfulness and cope with your emotion? Should you try to get over your fear? No. You should listen to that fear and use it, because the fear is telling you something. The fear is saying, you are going to die. In this instance, for Lisa, her fear is telling her, I'm worried I'm going to lose Usman. So the answer is not to invade his space, which is going to hurt his feelings and cause him to reject you. The answer is to express it, to tell him, I'm afraid. So to extend it to the car example is to turn to the person and say, you're drunk and you're driving erratically and it's freaking me out. You're scaring me, okay? If the person has have a heart, they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me pull over. I'll let you drive, or whatever it is. Rather than grabbing the wheel and saying, you're an alcoholic and you're a piece of S, or suppressing, you know what I mean? Anyway, let's see what happens.
And that drives me crazy. Hey, check your phone. Somebody was blowing it up.
Who was that?
So the way she's dealing with it is by saying, I'm watching you, I disapprove, and I'm angry. Usman isn't going to be cool with that. I mean, there's no evidence that he's cheating on her. He gets texts. What's the big deal? This is a concerning pattern.
I don't know, but it was not me.
It's even a new number. I don't know the number. Before Lisa come to Nigeria, she was telling me that I don't want to be hearing that phone ringing all the time. You have to switch it off.
Your phone is like blowing up.
She's always being jealous type. I thought it's going to be, a bit better when we meet, but she's even more controlling in person.
Yeah, I could see that. Usman's like, well, when we meet in person, when we have sex, when I'm there to kiss her and hug her, she won't be as jealous anymore, which is possible. But now he's finding, no, she is even more jealous and more controlling. Now, why would someone do that? Well, as you get more involved with someone, you're more vulnerable and you're more worried about losing someone. If you're on the first date and you get rejected, that's one thing. But if you're fully committed in a marriage or a boyfriend relationship, you're more vulnerable and now you're even more worried. And you also might have past relationships that are projected onto that relationship, that it's like, well, the last 10 boyfriends I had hurt me in some way. And that can also amplify the fears. So I'm really worried about Lisa. She seems to have no other way of coping with her insecurity other than to be very disapproving and controlling and angry. So that's really not a good sign.
This bucket you're seeing is going to bath you from head to toe.
No, it will not. Usman's home does not feel like a celebrity's home to me at all. Seeing the conditions that they live in, it's not what I pictured.
After you pulling out your clothes, then you be like,
Again, it always boggles me that the Americans, when they go to these other countries and find differences and they're surprised, that they would have a different way of bathing, for example. Like, do they think that everyone around the world is exactly like the United States? Now, I know for many of you outside of the United States, you're like, well, that's Americans. And, I'll have to agree with that. I might say that's maybe privileged people or something. I wonder if privileged people in other countries, like, say, France or something, they see a lot of American movies and American TV shows maybe, and there's enough depiction of bathrooms and the American culture so that they realize that there's at least one other culture besides the French culture. It's just because to Americans, there's a possibility that you could live until the age of 52 like Lisa and literally have never seen a depiction of another culture in terms of bathroom culture. I'm making a lot of accusations, but anyway, it always just kind of boggles the mind when It's a common scenario that they do on these shows. And maybe the producers are, trying to amp it up a little bit. I don't know. Where the American is just like, what's going on here in this other country? And, it's insulting, I would imagine. And who's to say that this other system isn't just as sanitary and workable as anything you have in the States?
Thank God we're staying at a hotel. I'm just gonna wash my hands, freshen up a minute.
Okay.
Give me a minute, okay?
Okay.
All right, babe.
And it'd be one thing if Lisa and other actors on the show were somehow forced to go to these other countries. It's another thing because when they chose to become engaged or to, go on the road to getting married with someone who lives in another country with a obviously very different culture than your own. Lisa signed up for this. She pursued Usman. And so to then go to his house and be rolling her eyes and you're like, what the hell is going on here? As if it wasn't something that she would imagine to be happening. It points to a possibility that of the people who do this kind of dating style, people from other countries, particularly countries like Nigeria or rural Philippines, these kinds of places, that it's possible that they have a particular style of romance, meaning that they want to look down on other people or they want to control other people or they're looking for people that they believe will not say no, or they're looking for people that will be subservient. That's a big accusation that I cannot say for sure at all. It's just an hypothesis that if any dissertation people, any doctoral students out there that are looking for a dissertation, I wonder if there's a dissertation in there somewhere for you. That would be pretty interesting, right? And maybe there is research on this, but somehow I doubt it that anyone has dedicated funds to researching reality TV shows and their colonialist ways. Anyway, let's continue watching.
In person, Lisa is more difficult than what I expected. And now that we are in Kaduna, I'm going to start introducing her to my industry colleague. And I just hope that she can be respectful because my job and my career is very important to me. And I don't want her to do anything to jeopardize that. She just came 2 days ago. So let's just wait and see what is going to happen.
So it's not the best strategy to just wait and see what happens because as he's seeing, it just is escalating, if anything, or at the very least, it's going to remain the same, where her behavior is disrespectful of his culture, disrespectful of his boundaries, assuming that he's cheating on her, invading his space, controlling him. Another strategy that he could approach and try is to, and I recommend this to people out there who are on the receiving end of behavior that you don't like, is to try to figure out what the attachment problem is in the other person and address that head on and sort of head it off at the pass. So one thing that Usman could do is go to Lisa and say, look, Lisa, I'm seeing some evidence that you're worried that you're going to lose me. I see evidence that you're worried that I'm going to cheat on you or that someone's going to take me away from you. Is that true? Sort of, even though Lisa should be able to identify that and communicate that in a effective way, it's possible when you're seeing behavior that is the result of attachment and the person isn't expressing it, to just kind of take a guess and try to have a conversation around that. That gives Lisa a chance to be like, oh, well, maybe. And then you can attack the insecurity head on instead of trying to manage everything. Like, well, I have to turn my phone off, or I have to tell everyone don't text me as much, or I have to not expose her to certain, that sort of management walking on eggshells strategy ultimately doesn't usually work in that situation. A more effective way, a more functional way is just to go straight to the heart of the matter and try to have conversations around that. And once you have that repertoire down, which could be difficult, but it's worth a shot, then when, his phone blows up, Lisa starts to kind of look over. Usman can say, honey, remember, I'm with you. That whoever is calling me is not a threat to my love for you. So even though Lisa isn't saying that, she's just exhibiting the behavior, and then okay, that's the result of insecurity. I'm just going to go straight to the heart of the matter. Now, Lisa has to go along with that, but it's in my book, a better chance of working than what Usman is saying right now, which is a typical response of just like, oh God, I hope this doesn't happen again. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining me, in which we follow Lisa and Usman. Check in next time when we continue with Lisa and Usman's story. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it, and take care of other people because they deserve it too, please. We all deserve those things.